Next, 4 of 6, digging with Perlin worms. Not just Perlin worms, but that was the coolest sounding part of what I'm going to talk about. Let's do this with motivations again. I'm going to cover Perlin noise a little bit in this. We're going to talk about some terrain shaping using manipulations of Perlin noise and running it through various easing functions and what that can have. And then we're going to talk through some wandering techniques, some like grade school simple ones, and then work our way up to Perlin worms, which is one of the cool ones. But some of the simple ones are cool too. We'll look at drunk robot, drunk Zax, drunk robot emu, drunk liberal emu, moderate conservative emu, and Perlin worm. Who's drunk? We're going to look at point-to-point methods like pathfinding, but also splining and wander towards, and what I call Perlin routes, which I think are awesome. So motivations, go. We want to make rivers, Minecraft, whatever. We want to make roads, right? We want to make canyons. We want to make mesas, mountains, caves. We want things to look organic, possibly, right? Like the river meandered naturally. We want things to feel coherent. We don't want them to stop suddenly or have abrupt, weird changes in direction, or just like a weird schism where they get cut off and don't lead to something else. So, Perlin noise, quick review, is smooth fractal noise. And actually, I'm going to do a quick thing. Okay, so if you want to know more about noise, I have a talk from last year that goes all about all this stuff. But a quick recap. So raw noise is just a simple function that you put in an integer, it mangles the bits, and you get out an unrecognizable integer. But if you put that same integer again, you'll get the same unrecognizable integer back. So it's like an infinitely large lookup table of floats. You plug in 57, you always get 0.56. So here is that. This is one-dimensional raw noise. It's just totally random values at different points. And I can show that in 2D as well. Right? So that's like a giant grid of points where this is from 0 to 1. And then I can have fractal noise, which is, or smooth noise, I should say. Smooth noise is where I'm just going to take these points and then do a smooth step curve from point to point to point. So this is kind of like when you connect nodes in the Unreal editor, it does a smooth step. It's just doing that from node to node to node. And then I can add octaves, and that's like adding more noise, more noise, more noise. And I can make those octaves louder or quieter, and I can zoom in and out of that. So as I add more octaves, I get sort of crunchier stuff. And octaves are basically more noise that's half as loud, but more frequent. So it's, in music terms, it's half volume, double pitch, or double frequency. And by controlling the number of octaves, I can control how smooth or how jagged it is, and I can also decide how much an effect those octaves have, and I can even normalize it within 0 to 1, so I can sort of keep it like that. So that's fractal noise, and then that looks like this in 2D. And that's kind of the base version. It's just the grid that's smoothed. You can really see that. But if I add another grid and another grid and another grid and make them louder, then it kind of masks it. And Perlin noise is just a sort of more clever way of blending this, where it's more organic looking. So this is what Perlin noise looks like. You can look at my old talk if you want to understand how it works. But I can easily add octaves, and I can go in and out. And one of the things that we often use Perlin noise for is heights in landscapes, right? I want to say the white parts are the high mountains, and the black parts are the low parts. And then I can easily say that there is a water, like a water threshold that says things below a certain amount are water and things above a certain amount are land. And I can change the noisiness so I can make those blobs be more solid or less solid. So that's the basic idea of Perlin noise. Like the sine or cosine function, it just wanders from -1 to 1 and back, but in a weird way. And because it's based on that awkward raw noise stuff that I said. So it's kind of like sine, only funkier. It's totally consistent. If you plug it in, you'll always get the same values out. It never repeats. You can add octaves to make it crunchy. And most importantly, you can seed it. So that noise I had, I can have totally different noise if I press the S button. It gives a completely different set of seed values. I could plug in any value, as you saw, horizontally and get the noise of that position. Or I can plug in an X and a Y and get the noise of that position, or an X and a Y and a Z. So if someone says there's 1D, 2D, 3D noise, that's just whether you're putting in X, XY, or XYZ into the input. But the answer is always a float from 0 to 1. All right, so I did my quick visualization demo. My GC 2014 talk goes into Perlin noise more. So terrain shaping. Vanilla Perlin noise. Oh, right, I'm doing demos for these. Okay. So this is vanilla Perlin noise in sort of a Minecraft-y-like thing. So it's got heights, and it goes above sea level and below sea level. And you can see there are large trends. Those are the Perlin noise. And then small trends on top of those. Those are the octaves on top of the noise. So that's kind of what generic Perlin noise looks like if you use it for heights in a Minecraft-y type of way. All right, easing functions. Do I have these? Yes. Okay. So smooth step. How many people are familiar with the smooth step function? Oh, good. So if I do smooth step to this same function, it's basically going to push the highs and the lows to be more high and more low. So I'm going to get more extreme landscape, right? So I get higher peaks and lower valleys, and so I get just a more extreme version of the same stuff. Highs are higher, lows are lower. If I do a smooth stop, it's interesting. That becomes sort of like a flat mesa-like terrain with these occasional canyons in it. Smooth stop, or also known as ease out, I think, I can't remember. That's the one where if you're at 1/2 on, say, 0 to 1, I map these into 0 to 1 before I mess with them. Then it's going to push it up closer to 1. So you're going to get lots of high values. Instead of values from bottom to high, you're going to get lots of highs and then a quick fall off to the lows. So if I go around, I'm going to get these craters and sort of canyons in the procedural content. There's one other one, yeah. With a relatively flat landscape. So that's kind of interesting. So I get wide, flat mesas with craters and canyons. If I do a smooth start, this is like noise squared, right? So 0 squared is 0, 1 squared is 1, but 1/2 squared actually becomes 1/4. So this makes a curve that kind of brings things down. So most of the noise is going to get sandwiched very low unless it's really high, and then it will shoot up. So you get these, smooth start. You get these flattish lands with kind of very tame hills for most of the thing. But just occasionally the noise will reach some threshold where squaring it will really take it up a notch. So you're going to get these extreme mountains in an otherwise flat land. This is technically the last one upside down. So low flat terrain with very rare but exaggerated hills. Absolute value, this is one of my favorites. I'm just going to take, remember Perlin noise goes from -1 to 1. So now instead of it going 1, then down to negative, and then up again, whenever it goes down, it's going to sort of bounce off the 0, right? Because as it goes negative, I'm going to get the positive version instead. So it's going to create noise that creates these bounces off the bottom that is going to tend to create these sort of channels, which look like rivers. And I can actually follow them. You get some really nice, just coincidental rivers that will go and go and go and go and go and go and go. So this is actually one of my favorite techniques for making rivers, is use the absolute value of Perlin noise. So it cuts low, then bounces off the 0, makes for some nice near infinite rivers. And by the way, it's near infinite because Perlin noise is going back and forth, and it's going to go down to negative and then up and then down, and inevitably it always crosses back and forth between the negatives and the positives. But since I'm doing absolute value, it's going to keep sort of being guaranteed to hitting that 0 a lot. So I don't know how to say it other than that. You'll get very consistent rivers. All right, that's for manipulating Perlin noise. You can get some cool stuff, mesas, the rivers. And by the way, you can easily have biomes like in Minecraft where you have the mesa biome and the sort of rivery biome, and you just do the math both ways and then you just soft feather it so like the mesas sort of become flat hills. Super easy math, super fast, 3 lines of code. So let's look at some discrete wandering techniques. I want to like stick a piece of road or river and say go and have it like squirrel its way across the landscape, no offense. Okay, wandering, basic idea. Pick a direction, go that way. Pick another direction, repeat. That's the basic wanderer. All right, so that's the drunken robot, I'm going to call it, because it's, yes, I have both demos open. Good. All right, so the drunken robot looks like this. He goes south and east and west and south. I don't know if you guys can see that, but he's basically wandering along. And he's just going in random directions, right? And if I just make him go his full length and just do a bunch of them, you can see that's kind of the path he would take. So if I was going to make that be, say, a river or a lava flow, I mean, it's kind of interesting, I guess. But it's not very coherent, right? It doesn't make sense. And it's sort of gritty and stuff. All right. So there's such a thing as a drunk robot. Next, let's do the drunken Zax. Does anyone remember the Zax? Is that what it's called from Dr. Seuss? There's an east-going Zax and a west-going Zax, and they only go east and they only go west, and their father only went east and their father only went west, and they come at a head, and neither will step aside because they only go to the west or the east, and so they stand there and they're stuck forever. So let's do the Zax. My version of the drunken Zax, so that's a sober Zax. A drunken Zax is he's sort of stumbling around, but he's generally still trying to go to the east. All right, so when he picks his random direction, it's north, south, west, or east, or east, or east. Right? Something like this. The drunken robot is north, south, east, west. The drunken Zax just sort of has more chances to pull an east out of his bag. He's got 3 east cards in his deck, if you will. So that looks like this. See, he does a lot of the east. East, 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 east. So he's fairly consistent about going east, but he still kind of stumbles and wanders around a little bit. But this can give me a sense of control and direction, right? And by the way, these are stepping stones just to explain the cooler stuff, but these are useful for a lot of generation. So there you go, there's the drunk Zax. Next, the drunk robot emu. So the emu is one of the few animals that will not, like cannot, I guess, go in reverse. It can't back up. Can only go forward or side. So this is just like a drunk robot, and I'm calling it a robot because it's on the grid, but it will never go backwards. So whichever way it went, it will then either go the same way or go right or left from there. That produces a slightly different effect. It's a little more coherent, right? He tends to have tendencies like that he'll go. He still spends a lot of time wandering in clumps. But we're getting a little better, right? This almost looks like a river. All right. Wanders north, south, east, west, but never reverse. That's your robot emu. Next, the drunk liberal emu. He's no longer a robot, but he's very open to possibilities. So the idea here is he's going to start in some direction, and then he, with each step, steers randomly, not just left, right, or straight, but anywhere in this plus or minus 90. So he's going to like take a step here, and then go that way, and then take a step here. So now he's sort of organic off-grid. I think this is him. So that's not bad. It's starting to look a little more interesting, all right? You have to make the sound effect. I heard that during the filming of the first New Jedi prequels, whatever, Ewan McGregor kept on going wow, wow with his sword, and they had to tell him to shut up. This is pretty cool. I would say I could ship this, right? This is like there's my lava lake. I can make it fat, whatever. So that's not bad. So the drunk moderate emu just doesn't make quite as erratic turns. He's only plus or minus anywhere between negative 60 and 60 degrees, right? You can tell from his face, this guy's all over the place. This guy's kind of moderate. So, which one is that? That's this. So this guy can turn up to 60 degrees with any one of these steps. So now he has a much more coherent wander, right? And that's actually pretty cool already. And if I do them, I get much more river road-like, I'll say river-like results. There, that's not bad. Or, all right. Then of course the conservative emu, same thing, he just steers only 60 degrees each time. So he's going to make very, very gentle curves. And this now is going to produce something that won't stumble back on itself too much, and it won't make too radical turns. Now it could get unlucky and go 30, 30, 30 and make a quick turn very, very rapidly, right? But overall, he's going to have a really nice feel. I actually think this is one of my favorites. All right, then Perlin worms. Let's explain what they are. So the Perlin worm is a drunk driving car whose steering wheel is controlled by Perlin noise. That's my explanation of it. So basically, if you're driving your car and then you have this negative 1-to-1 sine wave, but it's kind of funky, and that's controlling the position of your wheel. So it's like -1, we're turning left, right for you, et cetera, et cetera. But the cool thing about Perlin noise is because it doesn't just go like this, like random, because random is infinite frequency. Perlin noise sort of is coherent, it's smooth, it like wanders, so the wheel actually sort of gets turned back and forth instead of like just being snapped to random positions. All right, so what does that look like? Now, some of these are more desirable than others, because if they cross back on themselves, that may not feel that good as a river. But you can easily control how much of the steering wheel you give the how strong of its control is, so you can make it as tight, as conservative or as liberal as you want. And that really starts looking like, in some cases anyway, some cool rivers. And actually, if it lumps up like that, it may be interesting that it just makes an interesting blobby area, and the person who's seeing the content doesn't realize that that was caused by a worm spinning in place. All right, oh, and this is Perlin worm carving through terrain. Wow, this was running the whole time. I'm amazed at this laptop. Okay, so, wait, there we go. These are Perlin worm rivers that I'm carving. Ignore that column of blue. Now, the river only goes so far, which we'll explain here in a second, but like Minecraft, I just, for simplicity, had these rivers cut through the mountains, and so they just kind of go on their own. I could just as easily put a river somewhere and then let it wander downhill, right? So anyway, I can use any of these wandering algorithms to carve canyons, lay roads, or plot rivers through the landscape. Let's see how many apps we can run at once. Here we go. Okay, point to point. This is also useful, and this is stuff like, A-star pathfinding or weirder things. This is if I know where I want to end up, right? The wandering was just I start somewhere, I know where I want to start, but I don't care where it goes. Not really. Though we'll talk in a second. Actually, we'll talk in the next talk about some of the problems with not knowing where you're going to go. But sometimes you do want to know where you want to go. So for example, I have two cities, I want to make a road that connects them. But I want it to be like a, footpath that's kind of organic. So I want it to wander around and do things. Maybe it's sensible, maybe it tracks based on height, or maybe it just does something simple. All right, so the simplest thing I could do would be to do an A-star or something like that. That's going to give me really straight, boring paths, right? This is the most efficient path from this point to here. Does not feel like a river. Though it might feel like a road, perhaps like a paved road. Might be straight unless it can't be. Okay, another thing I could do is use, here, shall we go for three demos at once? 3. I can use curves like Hermite splines or Cat-Mill-Rom splines, where I can just say, oh, go from city to city to city to city, and it will automatically trace sort of the best route it can through the different waypoints. And then I can just run the river along that, right? I can even have Perlin noise that's like making me sort of drunk drive how much to the left and the right of ideal I am, so I can give it organic crunchiness, but still have it be on target, right? So you can use Perlin noise or Perlin worms to give things organic crunchiness, even if they feel really clinical and clean like this. They don't have to feel this way. That's just kind of the base of it. All right, so you can A-star your way, you can spline your way, you can wander towards. This is like just do the eastbound Zax, but instead of always going north, south, east, west, east, east, he goes north, south, east, west, or towards his goal, or towards his goal. So he'll sort of wander towards his goal and probably eventually maybe hit it. And if you want to do that, that's actually an interesting algorithm. The wander towards is useful because you can actually make his chance to wander. You can, instead of having it be like 6 marbles in a bag you're pulling out, and 3 of them are east, you can instead say there's a 50% chance that I wander, and there's a 50% chance that I walk in the right direction. And you can actually start that random chance at 0% correct, meaning he's just totally drunk. But he sobers up as he goes, and so his chance of making the right choice increases, and so he can sort of anime missile converge on his goal and always be guaranteed to meet it. Okay, last but not least, one of my favorite tricks, and I don't know a name for this, but I call it Perlin routes. All right, we're not going to do 4 at once. Is the basic idea of pick a route from A to B, pathfind, whatever, but pretend that there's geometry in your way that isn't really there. In other words, A-star your way through a complicated imaginary maze, right? So if I go like this, let's see if we can get some interesting one. There. That is not clearly the best straight shot from here to here, if these stone walls didn't exist, but they do exist in his imagination, so he's going to go around them, right? So Perlin routes are really cool because you get interesting behavior that's fairly sensible, that's trying to be productive, but it's making sort of irrational decisions along the way because it's trying to dodge invisible walls. And so the net result, can look pretty good, right? Like this or like this, something like that. Now you still tend to get some straight E bits, but again, you can wiggle those out with some Perlin noise. This is, I would say, the junior version of this algorithm. The real version that I use all the time isn't just spatter invisible walls and then pathfind through them. If you know how A-star works, there's a optional cost, a G cost they call it, which is like mud costs 2 units to travel through, but stone only costs 1 to walk across, and water costs 3 because you have to swim. So you can have variable costs. In fact, it's one of my favorite things to abuse in all of games. You use G costs that are higher for the light is, and so the assassin that likes to creep in the darkness, he will cross Main Street if he has to, but he'd much prefer to take the route through the darkness. Or the villager does the opposite, so she prefers to stay in the light on her way home from work, right? The more dark it is, the more expensive it is for her to path through it. You can get all kinds of cool organic stuff by messing with the G costs for A-star. So it doesn't just have to be blocks of walls and not walls that you're imaginary pathfinding through. What I like to do is take an imaginary grid, fill the whole grid in my mind of noise, and it's all kinds of values from 0 to 1, 0.6 here, 0.4 here, 0.3 here, raw noise or even coherent noise, and pathfind through that. And then you really get curvy organic stuff because he's constantly kind of making corrections A-star-y as he's going through the stuff instead of getting around a wall and then having a straight shot. So that also eliminates these straight things. I call that Perlin routes. A-star through Perlin noise. What about 3D caves? So we can carve them using 3D Perlin noise. That, again, is just like Perlin noise, but you plug in an X, Y, and a Z. And this is what it looks like in space. So these are just sort of the noise of 3D noise. And I can set a different threshold to say if you're above a certain threshold, you're a cloud, or whatever these are, marshmallow. If you're below a certain threshold, then you're not. But I could easily imagine that those are the shapes of the caves that I'm going to carve out of the ground, right? And that's what this would look like. Nope. This would look, nope, nope. This would look like. So now I'm like eating these clouds instead of having in the sky, I'm eating them out of the ground. And I'm eating them out of the sky too, they're just not doing much, right? So if I look around, I can see there are some moderately interesting caves that are produced from this. And I'm going to just fly through the walls because this is just a demo. And I can actually find some that are pretty interesting and compelling. I apologize if I make anyone sick. Like this section goes through here. However, the Perlin, 3D Perlin noise doesn't always close in on itself and doesn't connect through. It doesn't like lead anywhere. Not that caves have to lead anywhere. So Minecraft doesn't use that. Minecraft uses Perlin worms to carve its caves. Oh, there we go. This is not a bad one. So you can see, you can get some pretty good results by carving those white cloud blobs, just carving them out of the landscape instead. So Minecraft uses Perlin worms to carve. And this is what Minecraft's, I didn't have time to code it in, but I've coded it before, it's very easy. You just do a Perlin worm in 3D. So instead of the drunken Zax or whatever you want, right? Instead of just wandering sort of on theta, like on yaw, you're also gonna wander on pitch, right? So you can like wander and then you're pitching down and you're wandering and then you're pitching back and you're wandering. And maybe you're having a reaction of, well, Euler angles, yaw pitch, like that's gonna produce gimbal situations. So yeah, you could do something else like pick a random angle axis, rotation, or a quaternion or a matrix. But I'm here to say that it's better to just do something like yaw pitch and constrain your pitch. You'll notice in Minecraft, most of the caves tend to be flattish, and then occasionally they'll sort of dive down, and then they'll straighten out again. Because the pitch is more constrained, and it won't ever go upside down. So effectively, it's like the camera in Minecraft, where I can move the camera anywhere I want horizontally. So if I'm pretending to be a worm, I can move however I want like this, but I can only go so far down and I can only go so far up. So I'm constrained. And that tends to produce, I call it 2.5D, really nice caves. All right, so unbelievable, already 30 minutes. So yes, Perlin noise is awesome. Yes, I continue to pimp it, and we're going to talk lots more about it in the next talk, in our Infinite Worlds talk. Use easing functions on Perlin noise. Remember how easy it was just to take Perlin noise and like ease in, ease out, smooth start, smooth stop, whatever. And now you get mesas with crags, or now you get lowlands with jutting mountains, or now you take the absolute value and you get these awesome infinite rivers. Wandering algorithms are super simple, easy to tweak, fun to parameterize. They have tons of character, just saying how often they change, how much can they change, how drunk are they. All those numbers can change over time, so again, someone can get more drunk, less drunk, then more drunk, then less drunk, so that they can like get weird in the middle and then converge. You can have all kinds of fun with it. Perlin worms are one of the really nicest types of that wandering algorithms. And Perlin roots, meaning A star through Perlin noise, is one of my favorite ways to organically path from A to B, if I know where I want to go. Of course, if I don't know where I want to go, I can always still use that technique. I just pick a random place to go. So I can always use A to B algorithms, even if I want A to wherever. 3D Perlin noise is kind of cool, produces cool caves, and you can mess with that too. You can do smoothing functions on that. That's fun to play with. Can make some pretty decent caves, but Perlin worms probably, or wandering, tends to make better caves. And my recommendation is to do like Minecraft and have it be more horizontal than vertical, and do yaw pitch and just constrain it. And then your yaw is it's like a Perlin helicopter where this thing is being controlled by one Perlin noise and this thing is being controlled by another Perlin noise. Thank you very much.